All right, everybody. I think we're all set. Welcome to the CloudEndure Disaster Recovery Partner Enablement webinar. I'm Sue Persichetti. I'm the head of alliances in the Americas with Jefferson Frank. We are very proud to partner with AWS CloudEndure today, as well as Rebura, which is located in the UK. Sharing in the AWS journey and partnering with them for the long term is very, very important to Jefferson Frank, so we are really pleased to be able to bring this to you. This webinar will be recorded, so you're able to share it as you wish. So let's get right down to it. In this training, we will review key disaster recovery project concepts and learn how CloudEndure disaster recovery can maintain disaster readiness during normal operation, fail over to AWS in the event of a disaster, and fail back to your source and return to normal operation when the disaster has been resolved. We will discuss the market opportunity and the value proposition for partners and customers. Rebura will present a few case studies and a short demo, and then Jefferson Frank will roll out an offering that we currently have. At the end, we will have a short Q&A discussion with AWS CloudEndure as well as Rebura, so stay tuned for that. So let's just kick it off with Garrett. Garrett, take over.
Perfect. Well, I do appreciate the introduction here. Me, along with Ricky and Pat, will be the panelists today. So I have the pleasure of kicking things off for everybody here. All right. So as we mentioned, we are going to be discussing CloudEndure disaster recovery. I am Garrett Pollard. I am one of the sales specialists at AWS, focusing on CloudEndure disaster recovery. So to kick things off, I want to have a chance to discuss the current DR landscape. The disaster recovery market is actually projected to reach $21 billion, and that's billion with a B, by 2023. Let that sink in for a moment. DR is really something that all organizations have in place one way or another. It's also something most organizations are always trying to improve while somehow trying to reduce costs. And this is really why we're here today, to talk about using CloudEndure disaster recovery to do just that. So CloudEndure disaster recovery, you can look at it as a pilot-light solution that enables customers to have point-in-time failover capabilities into AWS, EBS, and EC2, while significantly reducing costs without having to sacrifice enterprise-grade resiliency in comparison to other DR solutions out there. I'd like to talk a little more about this by discussing our technology pillars below. They're really important to understand as we dive in. The pillars include flexibility, reliability, and of course, highly automated. To begin, we'll talk about flexibility here. We operate at the OS level, and this is really important to note because it provides us a great deal of flexibility. At that level, we can protect physical, virtual, cloud-based machines. We also provide our customers with the ability to utilize CloudEndure from any source into AWS EC2. This will be a great asset as you work to develop a DR strategy that's not just built for the present, but also built for the future as well as environments and strategies evolve. When it does come to compatibility, we support a wide range of OSs, applications, and databases. Essentially, as long as the machine is Windows or Linux-based and supported in AWS, we should be good to go. Lastly, we not only provide the ability to fail over, we also give our customers the ability to fail back once that disaster is resolved. The next pillar I want to talk about is reliability. And honestly, reliability is probably one of the most important characteristics when you talk about disaster recovery and overall continuity strategies in general. CloudEndure will be able to do its job without impacting performance. There'll be no disruption or reboot of source machines that are required. We also utilize continuous block level replication, where essentially we'll capture any block level change that happens at the source as soon as it happens and sync it with the target. That way we can provide sub-second RPOs. We'll also deliver an RTO of minutes. And what we see on average is anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes from you initiating a failover in the event of disaster and being up and running. The other thing that we provide here is point-in-time recovery options. This protects against any malicious attacks like ransomware, crypto locker, corruptions, human errors, whatever case you may have to actually go back to a different point in time, we can provide that. The last pillar here, highly automated. Plain and simple, pretty straightforward. CloudEndure is just easy to use, and we'll be showing you how easy it is to use and initiate a failover in a few moments. We also provide non-disruptive DR testing capabilities. This will allow you to spin up a machine just like you would in real life, in a real life failover, except it won't impact the source or the target. It'll really give you that peace of mind you need with the DR solution. And lastly, when it does come to cost, we leverage cloud economics in AWS EC2 to provide a low-cost solution without sacrificing that enterprise-grade resiliency, as I mentioned earlier. And we do this by utilizing a lightweight staging area in EC2, essentially utilizing, if you're familiar, a T3 small instance type, which is one of the lowest instance types you can use in EC2. All right, so these are our technology pillars, and I'm sure that you guys are jotting down some questions to ask us as we get closer to the end. But I guess one of the big questions you might have are actually around pricing and licensing. So we've always been very cost-effective solution, but actually as of this year, we decided to get rid of a contractual-based model and drop our pricing 80% and move to a more hourly metered flexible model here. And this is really important because this is what you expect from AWS. You can pay as you go with what you need as you need it. And how we do break out this pricing, this year with the metered use, we're just shy of 3 cents per hour per machine. And roughly that shakes out to be around $20 per machine per month. So when it does come to resources, this pricing is readily available for you to review anywhere, anytime. In fact, you can learn more about CloudEndure disaster recovery, not only from our website on AWS, which will have a lot of excellent content from videos to white papers, case studies, really whatever you need to be available there, along with consulting your local AWS specialist like myself. And you can also find the pricing on the AWS marketplace, and this is where we transact business. And this will have all your offers here. And there's also going to be a Jefferson Frank offer that we'll talk about a little later too. That'll be very exciting for our customers. All right, so now on to a little preparation, because we are going to show you a demo of a failover with CloudEndure disaster recovery. So I figured it's only right that we try to conceptualize this a little bit for you. So now I want to walk you through how CloudEndure disaster recovery works. As I mentioned earlier, we are any source into AWS. So what that means, we could be on-prem, failing over into AWS. You could have all your data in AWS and be failing over region to region or AZ to AZ. Or if you're another cloud provider altogether, we do provide cross-cloud failover into AWS. So we'll start from the left to the right real quick and jog through how CloudEndure operates before we dive into the UI here. So one of the most important things to know here is that we do deploy an agent on the source machine all the way on the left. And this agent helps us communicate with that CloudEndure management console. And that console resides within AWS. This agent is a very lightweight agent. It actually operates more as a write filter than anything, which makes things a lot easier. And on the target side, this is something that also needs to be prepared that's outlined in our prerequisites. Once we do create this target area for us to go to in the staging area subnet, we'll then begin that replication. So once that target environment is ready and we begin replication, we'll actually utilize whatever connection that you provide directly from source to target. So that could be a direct connect, VPN, whatever the case may be, we'll use whatever you'd like us to use, and this replication can be throttled as well. Another thing to mention about replication is that while your data is being replicated, we will actually encrypt it with 256-bit AES encryption and compress it in flight and at rest. And once it does arrive in AWS, you can then utilize native AWS encryption. So at this point here, you'll see that all your data is replicated from the corporate data center or any cloud into that staging area subnet. Once we get here, we'll be going into continuous data replication. So as I mentioned a little earlier, any individual block level change that happens at the source will be immediately synced with the target. And this is what gives you those sub-second RPOs that we discussed. So now that we're in sync, CloudEndure disaster recovery will be in a day-to-day state, meaning that your data will stay in that staging area subnet in this low-cost state until a failover occurs, and that's the only time you pay for the full resources. So as we progress here, before we can do any of the failovers or testing, we need to accomplish one of the most critical pieces of the puzzle here, and this is our blueprint. And our blueprint, or the CloudEndure blueprint, is our automation. And the way to look at it is a very similar concept as a CloudFormation template in AWS. Essentially, this blueprint tells machines not only where they're going, but what they need to be once you do initiate a test or a failover. It asks for a lot of information like subnets, IP addresses, security groups, instance types, really everything that we need in order to do the automation of spinning everything up for you. This can be done manually, but keep in mind, we're built for scale and we're built for the enterprise. So instead of doing it manually, you can utilize the discovery or analysis tools by letting them do their job to assist with discovery, with right sizing and things like that. And then we can export that CSV file, and then you can import that in to build the blueprint. And we're also built on APIs and make them available for you to use. So if you're savvy with that and that's an approach you wish to take, we have a bunch of great resources and documentation around it. So as we wrap things up here, once we do build out this blueprint, we want to validate that. So we use the test option to validate the blueprint, just to make sure that everything works and that we'll be good to go when the time does come. So at this point, we've been in a state of DR readiness. So in the event of an actual disaster, we will go ahead and initiate a failover. And then you'll be prompted to pick from 60 different recovery points over the last 30 days. These recovery points will be critical to recover from any malicious attacks, like we mentioned earlier, ransomware, crypto locker, human error, whatever the case may be, you have a recovery point to choose from. And as you'll see as we walk through the actual failover, once you select that recovery point, we'll be able to kickstart that automation and take care of all that for you. But once this is resolved, again, I mentioned we do provide the ability to fail back as well. But before giving too much away here, everybody, I'd like to introduce Ricky, who will be able to walk us through the actual demo of CloudEndure failover.
Brilliant. Cheers for that. Right, let me just share my screen. So this is the CloudEndure dashboard. It's all pretty easy to navigate your way around. I've got an existing project that's been set up. This has just been set up as a migration project for simplicity, but it's much the same process for DR. If we go under setup, we can see the replication settings that have been configured here. And for the purposes of this demo, we're just doing an AWS to AWS migration. But as you saw, you can migrate from other cloud or cloud providers, or from bare metal, or from VMware. So you can see here, migrating from Ireland into US East. You can configure some settings here, such as using dedicated replication servers if you need to. If you want to manually change the replication server type, that can be configured. And you can also enable volume encryption on the migrated data. You can also throttle the network bandwidth, though I've not really had to use it in the past. Generally, it just works. But if you do have a requirement to just throttle, you can set that here. So if we have a look here, I've currently got one machine that's been set up for replication. If you need to add machines, it's a fairly easy process. You can go through automating it. But you can see here the instructions for setting up the agent on your source machines is fairly straightforward. Linux machines, it's a couple of lines. For Windows machines, you just run this installer and you're set up. The documentation that CloudEndure provide gives you all the details on ports that you need to open up and all that side of it. So that's fairly easy to get done. Yes, so we can see here we've got one machine that's been set up for continuous data replication. And I'll just show you that here. So this is my source machine, which is sitting in Ireland. And if we move to US East, you can see we've got the CloudEndure replication server running, which is just a T3 small, so it's fairly tiny. And we can see the volumes that have been set up just to replicate across the data. So if we switch back to Ireland, we can see here you set up for continuous data replication. So you've got an RPO of sub-second. If we go ahead with launching the target machine, just in test mode, you'll see it's fairly easy to get everything kicked off here. Ooh. So when I hit continue here, it's going to kick off the process of getting that launched in my target of US East. While we're waiting for that to happen, we'll just show you the blueprint functionality that you heard previously. So here, you've got quite a few options. You can just leave this as default. So machine type, copy source, it's just going to launch a machine in the target, which is a copy broadly of the resources that you've got in the source. You can set the launch type here. You can also configure what subnet and security groups you're going to be using if you have an environment already set up in AWS. And you can also set some tags here. You can also set per machine replication settings. So you can set replication settings on the project, which is going to apply to everything, or you can set replication settings on a machine by machine basis if you've got any requirements there. So if we just look at the job progress here, we can see kicked off. Going through the process of replication. And you can also see in the event log when different tasks were kicked off. So again, here you can see at this time, a few minutes ago, I kicked off a test launch of this machine. So hopefully here, we can see this is just pending at the moment. And shortly this should have passed the status checks and be shown as running. So fairly simple process, and this machine is just going to be a clone of your source. So really easy to do. If we go back to the CloudEndure dashboard, you can see here it will flag up that it's been tested. So you can run through test migration, test DR of every machine beforehand. So you've got that confidence that your DR process works. Excellent, we can see that's just launched there. So it's just updated here and shown that a few seconds ago we did a test failover. So you can run through test failover, get that assurance everything's working, so that if you ever do have to do DR, you know that the whole process works. Right, just going to run through a case study of a customer that we used CloudEndure on previously. So Velicor were hosting a multi-server shipping application in a private cloud. It was just a single site. So they came to us because they wanted to guarantee that the application could continue running if that private cloud became unavailable. They're running about 8 servers, mostly on VMware, but the database servers were running on bare metal. So it was a mix of server types there. So they came to us because they wanted a DR solution that would offer fast failover onto public cloud. So they'd chosen AWS for that. They wanted secure data transfer, which is possible in CloudEndure. They wanted minimal costs of their DR environment, so they didn't want to be paying a lot of money for their DR environment to be sitting there. And they also wanted to be able to fail back. So in the case of DR, they wanted the solution to be able to provide functionality for them to fail back into their private cloud. So we suggested CloudEndure to them, and obviously recommended AWS. CloudEndure covered everything that they needed, and combined with AWS, it just let us build an environment that they could use in case of a failover. So the deliverables for that were for us to pre-configure the AWS environment for networking access and security. So what that means is we could basically set up the entire AWS environment in DR for them, make sure everything was working, make sure they had the access they needed, the connectivity they needed, and then set up CloudEndure within that environment. So we could pre-seed all the server data and continuously replicate that into AWS using CloudEndure. So using the staging area, all the data is replicated and just ready to go when you need it. We connected their current data center into AWS with site-to-site VPN, just normal standard stuff for AWS. We also set up blueprints for the servers so that all the configuration, like disk types and what IP addresses and security groups we used was already pre-configured. So you didn't have to play around with that after a failover, which saves time. They can manage everything from the dashboard you've just seen. So running tests is easy. Looking at the status of everything is really straightforward. And also they were able to run test failovers whenever they wanted. So good thing with CloudEndure is it makes it really easy for you to run the testing. And from previous experience, a lot of companies aren't always great at performing DR tests. CloudEndure makes it really, really easy. So That's excellent. So by the end of the project, they had a full DR solution in AWS. Main highlights were they had a DR solution that was extremely cheap. So you're basically just paying for the staging area for CloudEndure, which is fairly low cost, and the storage that you need for the replication. So yeah, the ongoing costs are low because you only spin up the new instances in the DR environment when you actually need them. The complete site failover process was less than 30 minutes. So as you saw in the demo, the actual server failover is much quicker. You're talking about minutes, single digit. But for this customer, the actual failover process was a bit longer, but still less than 30 minutes. Again, minimal user interaction. It's really easy to kick everything off from the CloudEndure dashboard. And failback solution worked fine. So no data loss when failing back. For this particular customer, they eventually decided to move to AWS permanently, and they're able to do that just using CloudEndure. So just DR failover into AWS, and that was it. They were sorted. So yeah, very good solution, very low cost for the customer, and they were very happy with it. Right, that is my part of the presentation done. So I'm going to hand over to Pat now. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ricky. Just give me 2 seconds to get the screen share going. First off, thank you everybody that's joined. I hope you're staying safe, and you can't wait for everything to get back to normal. It was a little cold today, so I couldn't really work from my tent. So if you hear any background noise, I do apologize. I'm not joking. I actually do have a tent set up in my front yard that I do work in with a desk in it. So I'm here to really introduce Jefferson Frank. We are the leading specialist in AWS specific recruiting. All we do is focus specifically on helping organizations build out their AWS capacities through permanent and staff log hires. So we have over 300 recruiters dedicated solely to AWS in 19 offices across the US, Europe, and APAC. And we are actually the only agency or the only recruiting solution in Marketplace. And I'll get onto that in a minute. Our mission is simple. We want happy customers. We are a one-stop shop in Marketplace, and it doesn't matter whether you're looking to fill a DR resource on a contract basis or larger scale infrastructure, platform, DevOps, or security needs. We can help you out. And how we do that is we do our resourcing through a candidate search tool that we have that we can offer out to our customers. That we've actually are in the process of migrating to AWS and enhancing on AWS to transform what your traditional recruiting experience would be to enable you to go out and search for some of your some candidates on your own in an autonomous manner, while still getting the customer service that Jefferson Frank would provide on the back end. And at this point, our offer for the year is that if you spend $1,000 in a credit up front, we take $1,000 off the overall bill, whatever it is. So we've now increased that to up to $3,000. So we'll match you dollar for dollar up to $3,000 if you have any needs in disaster recovery or other AWS initiatives. And really just want to say thank you to Sue, Garrett, Ricky, and everybody that's helped put this together. Lauren, thank you very much. I'm just going to turn it over to Q&A, and we'll go from there.
Hey, Pat, thank you so much. It's Sue again. We're here at the Q&A section. And I do have a question, and I believe, Garrett, this one will go to you. And Pat, if you could go to the opening screen or the thank you screen, that'd be awesome. Will the LP be changed when VMs move to AWS? What's the bottom hypervisor running when it is failover to AWS? And when failover back to Prem, will the VM will be changed to VMware? I hope you can see that question, Garrett, and I didn't wreck it, yep. But I think that one's for you.
Yeah. So I did answer it. I did add my little answer in there in writing, but yes, the IP address can be changed via the blueprint. Once you do open up the blueprint, you have the capabilities to, create a new one, use the same one, whatever you want to do. Most of what you would define after or when we do fail something over will be defined in that blueprint. Again, it asks for a lot of great information there. In regards to the bottom line hypervisor running, it'll just be a native AWS hypervisor. So that's what we'll be utilizing. And when we do initiate a fail back after an actual disaster, yes, we can go back to that VMware VMDK or where we came from. That'll be part of the failback process. So yeah, all not a problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Garrett. Another question. How does CloudEndure ensure consistency?
If you're talking about ensuring consistency in respect to any changes that are happening, that is the block level replication that we're doing. So once we do initially deploy an agent and replicate that data over, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we go into a continuous data replication mode. And this mode, once everything is replicated, that agent's still communicating. We identify any individual block level change that happens as soon as it happens, and we bring it over to the target. And this is how we deliver the sub-second RPOs. And then, of course, when you do failover, you have the ability to pick a point in time for whatever reason you might have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to just read off one more question. Were you able to answer that last question that Joy put up there on the chat?
Yes, I want to keep. Yes, I want to keep the IP. Is that possible? Yes, it is. Just make sure it doesn't conflict.
Okay, great. Hope that helped, Joy. So one more question, okay? I'm just going to go with one more. How is replicated data secured?
Yeah, so all your data, CloudEndure is encrypting and compressing that data during replication, or at least the piece that we handle. So that's all encrypted with 256-bit AES encryption. And also keep in mind that we operate at the OS level. So at the OS level, to be perfectly frank and honest, we don't know what it is, nor do we have access to it. So we just essentially lift and shift it on over. It's also encrypted, as I mentioned. And once we get there, you can then switch over to native AWS encryption. And of course, all the safety and security that AWS has to offer.
Okay, great, Garrett, thanks. We have a few more up on the chat. Do you charge initial setup costs?
No. So, well, it depends. If you're setting it up yourself, no. But we do have a bunch of excellent partners, and of course, right. Jefferson Frank does provide, some folks to help with services as well. That stuff will cost money, but obviously, if you're doing stuff on your own, we do have a lot of documentation and specialists that can at least help guide you in the right direction. But all in all, pretty simple stuff to use. Great.
Asif, will you email us the link? We could listen to the recorded session. Yes, we are. We are recording it, and we will be happy to share that with you via email. Assume the block level replication is async.
Yes.
That is a question for you, Garrett.
And the answer is yes.
Perfect. And Joy came back and asked one more question, and Garrett, you may have answered it, but I'm not sure. I want to keep the IP. Is that possible? Did you answer that?
Yes. You can,
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
I did.
Okay, great. So guys, I think that's enough for the question and answer. I do want to say one thing on behalf of AWS, Jefferson, Frank, and Rebura. We really are pleased that you came and attended this webinar. We hope it helped. We are going to record this. We'll put it on LinkedIn. We'll also send it out to you. But if you have any questions at all with regard to CloudEndure, obviously you can get in touch with us at Jefferson Frank or AWS directly with CloudEndure, and Rebura as a partner. We can help get you in touch with them as well. So either way, if you're looking, just take a look at, you can find us on LinkedIn or straight, you will be getting an email from us. If you have any other questions for us at all, or any ways that you need to get connected with each other or with ourselves on this webinar, we are happy to help. So thank you so much for joining, and we really hope your families are healthy and safe. And we look forward to our next webinar. Look out for some more webinars coming from Jefferson Frank. Thanks so much, everyone.